All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to look at a really interesting and maybe a little concerning shift that seems to be happening with students in Taiwan. This isn't about grades going up or down. Nope, this is about the very way they're learning and whether the links between different subjects are starting to disappear.
So let me just ask you this. Has your own knowledge become a bit, picky? You know what I mean. Maybe you're a whiz at science, but you just can't get into social studies. Or you love literature, but you run from a math problem like it's on fire. Well, this might be more than just a personal preference. It could actually be part of a much bigger trend where students are getting really good in one area while other skills get left in the dust.
And this leads us to what some are calling a pretty worrying trend. It's something that's popping up in the latest university entrance exam data, and it seems to go completely against what modern education is trying to achieve. So what are we seeing? Well, to put it simply, the connections, the bridges between different subjects, seem to be getting weaker. And this isn't just happening in one or two spots. The data is showing this widespread thing you could call skills siloing, where students' ability gets super focused on one subject instead of being balanced and interconnecting. But, don't just take my word for it. Let's actually dig into the numbers, because they tell a really clear and honestly pretty startling story about just how big this change is. So get this, out of 15 possible combinations between the course subjects, you want to guess how many showed a weaker connection from one year to the next? 13. That's right, 13 out of 15. That's almost all of them. We're talking about a near total drop in how these different skills relate to each other. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just quickly make sure we're on the same page with this term subject correlation. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just a way to measure how two things relate. So a high correlation means that students who are good at one thing, let's say math, are also pretty likely to be good at another, like science. Makes sense, right? Well, what we're about to see is those relationships getting weaker. All right, let's set our baseline. Here's a quick look at how things were back in 2025, or the 114th academic year. This is our starting point, our before picture. So let's check out the top 5 strongest connections from that year. Coming in at number 1, probably no surprise here, is math and science with a really solid correlation. Next up, we have English and science, followed closely by Chinese and social studies. You can see these logical links, right? These were the strong bridges holding student knowledge together. But that was 2025. This is where the story takes a sharp turn. Let's see what happens, or maybe what unravels, just 1 year later. Okay, now take a look at the data for 2026. At first glance, the top pairs look pretty similar, but look closer. Look at the actual numbers. Every single one has gone down. The strongest link, Math A and Science, dropped. Chinese and Social Studies took a hit. And hey, did you notice the rankings even shuffled around a bit? Chinese and English actually moved up a spot. The key takeaway here is that these connections are weakening all across the board. And this chart just drives that point home. It's so clear when you see it visually. Even the most solid connection we had, that powerhouse combo of math and science, wasn't safe from this drop. This isn't a fluke, folks. This is a pattern. So you have to wonder, where did the connection get the weakest? Well, the data seems to point to a familiar divide, one that's apparently getting even wider, the gap between the arts and the sciences. And there it is. The single biggest drop of them all was between Chinese and science. That's a huge signal that the bridge between that language-based, humanistic way of thinking and the analytical, scientific approach, well, that bridge is getting a lot shakier for students. Okay, so we've got falling numbers and weaker links. But let's get to the real question. Why does any of this matter? What are the actual consequences of some numbers going down on a chart? Well, here's the kicker. This whole trend directly clashes with the main goal of Taiwan's current educational curriculum. The 108 curriculum was put in place specifically to create interdisciplinary talent, students who can see the connections between different fields. This data suggests the exact opposite is happening. And the potential fallout here is really serious. We're talking about more than just not meeting a policy goal. This trend could actually weaken a student's ability to handle our complex, fast-changing world. Real-life problems don't stay in neat little boxes, right? They require us to pull knowledge from everywhere. If we're training specialists who can't connect the dots, we might be making it harder for them to solve the big problems of tomorrow. So this all brings us to what might be the most important part of this whole conversation. Looking at this data,
Knowing what we know now, what do we do about it? How should we respond?
Now, it is so important to understand this. This data is not about blaming anyone, not teachers, not students. Think of it more like a critical signal, an early warning light on the dashboard. It's telling us that our educational path might be leading to an outcome we didn't intend, something that's almost anti-education, and it's a trend that we have to take seriously and really dig into.
And that leaves us all with this fundamental question. In a world that needs both deep knowledge and broad thinking, where should our true focus be? This data suggests we might be choosing specialization, but at the cost of connection. And we really have to ask ourselves, in the long run, is that a price we're willing to pay?